Is it theft and a breach of copyright to use copyrighted images in the training of AI image generating models? Many believe that it is theft because those images must be downloaded and saved onto a computer, which is a type of illegal storage, duplication, or reproduction, in essence, copying, without the consent of the copyright owner. Also, that it is illegal to materially incorporate someone else's intellectual property in the development of a for-profit product without a license or consent of the owner. Firstly, it is actually legal to download publicly available copyrighted images for certain uses, reference, or learning based on the use and intent, especially if you could simply save the website address to look up that image every time you wanted to reference it. Also, every computer downloads every image it presents on screen. It is often saved on your computer and in many cases stored whether you did it manually or not. If the duplication, copying, or storage of copyrighted images was illegal, you would be breaking the law every time you looked at an image online. Clearly, it is about the context of use, specifically fair use. Fair use is a defense that can validate anyone to use and indeed copy other people's copyrighted material depending on these factors. The purpose and character of use. Is it transformed enough from the original? The nature of the copyrighted work. Was it private material or already distributed to the public? Did viewing the material cost money or was it freely available? The amount and substantiality of the portion used in relation to the copyrighted work as a whole, and the effect of the use upon the potential market for or value of the copyrighted work. Fair use defense can be validated in court if the use satisfies enough even one of these allowances. The most significant factors in fair use of copyrighted material in the training process of AI image generation is the level of transformation of that material and the amount and substantiality of the portion used in relation to the copyrighted work as a whole. So with fair use in mind, the issues are thus. First, is it legal to obtain copyrighted images that are available to be viewed by the public via downloading and storing the images in the first place to then use in training? Second, is the resulting data, meaning the amount of the image itself that is retained within the trained model from the training process, transformed enough from the original image? This is the only part that could be considered stolen within the resulting model. And thirdly, does that stored information within the model from the training images constitute whole or part of that image? And if only parts, does it use so little that it could successfully qualify for fair use defense if taken to court? You can only understand if the training of AI image generating models satisfies both of these defenses if you understand how the training works and what is stored in the resulting models. The training is done by diffusing an image into static and then repairing it back into its normal state, recording the patterns that appear through the diffusion process in code. This line of code amounts to a few bytes of data. Not megabytes or kilobytes, just bytes. It is literally impossible to reconstitute the image, even in a recognizable state, based on these bytes of information or line of code. In this sense, the copyrighted image used does not exist at all in the resulting model. The data that is created from this training process that is retained in the model is literally unrecognizable from the image itself. So much so that it would be impossible for an artist to find out if one of their images was even used in the training process from finding the information that is kept in the model that was created from their artwork. But then how can certain AI image generators recreate images used in its training set? This can only happen if the training image group was very small, like when training a face model, or if the image appeared in the training set multiple times. Only when all the little bytes of information from the duplicate diffusion training steps of the same image are combined can an image that can even be considered a rough type of duplication appear. But it can never create a perfect one-for-one copy, and even these duplications often have more than enough changes in them to satisfy a fair use defense in this new image's use in commercial purposes. This means that for nearly all images that are used in the large trained models, except for prominent ones that appear multiple times, it is impossible for them to be generated in any type of copy. But the key part of this is the tiny amount of data created from an image that was used to train a large general-purpose model. Even when the same image is processed through multiple diffusion steps, the resulting data is still minuscule and unrecognizable to the input image except when training a model for the express purpose of copying the input images, such as a trained face model. Also, the data that is created in the training process does not even exist in the image without the diffusion pattern. This is a crucial part to understand when considering if the training process steals the image, because the resulting information isn't even present in the image to begin with without the diffusion static. You cannot steal something that was not there to steal in the first place. We can visualize this by looking at a line art drawing of a character. And yes, I'm purposely using a copyrighted image in this demonstration to emphasize the significance of fair use, and that we should not be afraid to use copyrighted material in fair use capacities. We do this on YouTube all the time for parody and review. To simplify the training process, instead of static, we will overlay a squiggly line. This squiggly line was not present in the original artwork. We are adding it, and then we pinpoint all the places where the squiggly line intersects the lines of the drawing underneath, and we record those intersections in code as a grid reference. Once done, we delete the drawing and squiggly line, but keep the recorded intersections as a pattern. Now, this is not how the training process works, but it is close enough in concept to demonstrate what information is created and stored through the training process. Take a look at the intersections that we were able to record when we overlaid overlay the squiggly line over the drawing. Does it resemble the input image in any way? How could anyone come to any conclusion other than that this is something completely new and different to the resources used to make it? Of course, if we repeat this process many times, we could eventually get enough intersections for the resulting data to mildly represent the input image. But even then, the information created from only one or even several training steps is so unrecognizable and different to the input image that it could easily satisfy a fair use defense based on transformative use alone. But there is another criteria to satisfy fair use defense, and that is the amount or portion that was used from the copyrighted work and the amount of that copyrighted work that remains in the resulting product. So little information is created in the resulting data that you could only find about or less than 0.01% of information from a single image used amongst the billions of images that are used to train a large image generating model. It is completely legal to use copyrighted material for uses such as this, that transform the image so much so that it isn't even recognizable to the original, that the information created through this training process isn't even detectable and therefore present in the image without the static diffusion revealing it, and that so little information is retained from the input images within the model after the training process. But if it is perfectly legal to use the copyrighted images in these fair use ways, was it legal to obtain them in the first place? The way to protect against people using your intellectual property in ways you do not want, but are still permissible under the law, is to control the intellectual property's distribution. No one can use the material if they cannot possess it, but people reproduce, copy, and distribute their copyrighted material all the time, and so long as that material was obtained legally, through the distribution methods the copyright owner is using, any person is allowed to use that material in any legal capacity. Some might claim downloading a copyrighted digital image on your computer is illegally obtaining it, or in other words, theft. But that isn't what's happening at all. In fact, by posting the image online, the copyright holder is literally distributing the image to anyone who is allowed to load it and look at it. Posting an image online that you hold a copyright over is literally publishing and distributing your intellectual property. It is false to think people are illegally obtaining the image when they look at it online, which literally requires downloading it, otherwise it would be impossible for it to appear on your screen. But the reality is the image is being freely distributed to everyone who is allowed to access it. As soon as you allow the public to see your digital copyrighted material, you are distributing it to them digitally, and so long as anyone legally obtains the material, they can then use it in any legal capacity, which absolutely includes fair uses under the law. But the issue with storing copyrighted images that were distributed to the public is ultimately a moot point, because the training process could be done without even a single image technically being saved onto the computer. The training program would simply need the image loaded onto the random access memory or RAM of the computer, which can easily be done when the image is available online. The training program could simply look up the image URL, load it into the RAM of the computer, process it through the training program, purge the image from the RAM, and then load up the next image from another URL, and the image was never copied or stored on the computer. As I've studied this, and to the best of my knowledge, it is currently perfectly legal to acquire publicly available copyrighted images for this type of use, and that having the newly created data present in the resulting models is not materially keeping even a fraction of enough of someone's intellectual property to be an actual breach of copyright law, and therefore the large AI image generation models are in no way built upon stolen assets or illegal use of intellectual property.